I'm going to commit a hate crime. I'm of course kidding. That is just a joke. Um, as you people probably read by the title, what am I talking about? The human race was a mistake. This is going to be a series where I basically complain about my frustrations with existence and the world. I also want to remind people of the horrors of the world. And today, so before I get started, I want to give out a fair warning. We're gonna be talking about some, you know, traumatic stuff for people, and it's not kid friendly. It's very rough stuff, but it's important because people go through it all the time, and it's if people don't even talk about it, it's never gonna get solved, right? So what I want to address is that I don't think it's common knowledge, or it's sort of not given a second thought, which is that in a lot of traditional countries, or like places like South Asia, Africa, Middle East, countries like the Philippines, India, African countries, places like that, and perhaps even Latin countries. Kids, in the relationship they have with their parents, it's what we, at least over in the West, would describe as quite abusive. Not necessarily in the physical, although that is quite prevalent, is more of emotional and psychological, and it's extremely controlling. So I want that to not be the case, and what if people know about it, perhaps people would be more vocal about adopting a different way of raising a child, things like that. And so to give you some context or examples, whatever you want to say, is that a lot of these places, I don't really know, places like that. It's sort of everybody kind of knows about what's going on and things like that. It's kind of a lot of times it's quite out in the open. Everybody knows about it, but it's was insanely common, and it's normalized. So no, everybody, even if you say it, they might have give you like if you're like asking for help or asking why this is, they might be just like they might just give you like a sad remark like, oh, that's terrible or something like that. But then they won't like really go on like it's like a tragedy or anything. It's because it's just how things are basically, which is awful. But that for example, Epstein ran horrible human trafficking, pedophilia run by state officials and government leaders and things, and no one really cares. One of those atrocities that we just kind of ignore or just go with, because how the hell are you going to change it, right? So things like corporal punishment, which is still kind of a shaky subject in the West, but it's not as common, or at least as frequent. Maybe like the occasional smack or something, but not like all the time, or just like anytime a kid says something, you slap them in the face or something. And what happens is, so a lot of these places are poor or something, and they have like very rigid, quote unquote, patriarchal gender roles, which is true, very much true, and very traditional, very rigid rules, and very strict way of raising your children. For example, if a kid were to object to a parent or any sort of adult or authority figure in any any visible way, whether that be a facial expression, some sort of talking back, trying to even just explain their side of the story, or like why they did something that to us may seem just like whatever, like nothing, but it's a big deal to them, and they'll just either be hit, they'll be yelled at, they'll be smacked, they'll you're caged into the house and things like that. Although I'm not saying that these sort of things doesn't happen in the West, or everybody everywhere in the world. It obviously does, but I just want to, at least in the West, if you heard about most people, they would say, oh, that's terrible, it shouldn't be the normal case. But in those places, that is that is the normal case. That is what is done by most people. Obviously, there are great people who would never do something like that and understand that, never do that to their kid and whatever. But most people, it is how they do it, and it's a lot of times it's like good people. Like you think like good people do bad things, and I know that's hard to admit and sometimes accept, but it's true. A lot of good people will still participate in that because, well, for example, if you're going on a road and it's one road, everybody around you is going on that same road. You're gonna go on that road. You're not gonna, you know. I know that's kind of an odd analogy, but I hope I'm articulating this correctly. And it's kind of hard to understand because you don't have the background knowledge and the context that I have. But maybe you can do some research if you want to. But you might have a breakdown or something. But it's important, at least to me. What I mean is, like, for example, if a kid is failing in their classes because maybe they went out with their friends or something, or like something like that, or maybe they have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or they're spending time with them. It's like, this is just like, that's a tragedy to them. This is like absolutely unacceptable. There'll be all the punishments you can imagine in any way. It's just gonna be railed on them. And although it is more common than it is, let's say, 20 years ago, things like a teenager, I'll give an example, going out with her friends, or going out to the park, or going on a little trip, dating, things like that. Very, very against. It's not the right path, because the culture has a very traditional path in mind, because this is what good kids do, and anybody who delineates apart from that path, and perhaps that be through a career, marrying someone who they love. I mean, this is you're gonna find this quite funny. At least I do. That there's, in like places like India or the Middle East, there's a thing called love marriage, and then there is marriage, which is like I think you can understand what that means, but any like teacher, like you could say, like if a kid is going through some shit at the house, they'll tell their teacher, and sometimes those teachers may be helpful in certain ways, but a lot of times the teacher won't even flinch, because that's how things are. It's like, oh, I woke up a little late, I didn't clean up. Maybe your family has a barn, and you didn't manage to clean up the floor or like the barn or something, and now your dad hit you in some way, and you have a scar, you have blood, or you're in a bad mood. It doesn't matter. You're still in the fault. You are, or people will say, well, you shouldn't have done that. But it's like, I mean, come on, But, and a lot of times like, for example, the neighbors will see, just like a horrific sight, like a kid getting kicked around in a front yard, or getting hit with like a stick or something, or just like obviously that's just like the physical stuff, but the amount of verbal assaults, things like you're useless, things I just can't say. It's just everywhere and constantly made to feel, essentially, and I want to get people through this, people's mind, essentially, a good kid is a kid who is, and I'm not exaggerating, I mean this, a good kid is a kid who is a slave to their parent, to the culture, to authority figures, to adults. And I mean slave, very much knowing what that word means. So with that, I'm going to finish off. Obviously, I can go on elaborating on all of the nuances of how this happens, and why, and all of the things we can do. But obviously, I can sit here and complain for 10 hours. Nothing's going to change. Nothing ever changes. That really is the futility of the world, but there is no hope. Is basically the point, and I'm going to link some donation, some charities of something relating to that in the description. I just wanted to get this to let people know. I don't know what you're supposed to do sitting there in, I don't know, in Canada. You know, the best thing you can do is just keep out, look out for your fellow human being and try to be the best you can be and be a bit more alertive. And if anybody needs a little help, they're having a bad day, sit down, talk to them, be there for them. Just notice that if someone's going through some shit, obviously you don't have to be, you don't have to be a psychologist, but just little things. And the worst problems in the world isn't that your Wi-Fi is down, but most people don't really care. All right, I'm gonna see you all later. Probably come back with something else. Peace.